leave your church and uh, and and join us, but just come visit with us. B'nai Israel, we will observe Shabbat. I think you'll be glad you came. I shared a little bit yesterday about what you'd expect there. You'll see people dressed in all kind of dress, from suit and ties to jeans to cargo shorts and flip flops, and it's just a time where people come together that are seeking truth and wanting to follow the Father as closely as we possibly can. So I told you I was going to talk a little bit about the Sabbath today, and what we do is we observe Sabbath. I think you're going to be surprised because there's so much confusion and so much tradition about the Sabbath that, quite frankly, makes it a little bit intimidating to a lot of people. I've had some of my Christian friends say, well, if I was going to observe the Sabbath, what do you do on the Sabbath? Well, you'll be surprised that there's really not much instruction about what to do. It's just what not to do. So there are a lot of traditions, and I would encourage you to start your own tradition. But it's not about what you do on the Sabbath. It's what you don't do. And we don't do any work. That is, you don't conduct business. You don't try to provide for your livelihood. It is a day when we set aside and rest in our Father and trust His provision, that He is the one that made the heavens and the earth, 6 days. In fact, we read in Exodus from the Ten Commandments, beginning in verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. In other words, holy means set apart, different from the other days of the week. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath. Now notice he didn't say a Sabbath, he said is the Sabbath, the seventh day, not the first day. The seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahweh thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, that is not you, nor your son, nor your daughter, your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that is within your gates. Remember, we've talked about the strangers, those that were Gentiles that had joined themselves to Israel. They observed the Sabbath as well. Verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Wherefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And so He has commanded us to keep this Sabbath. It's a day of rest. Listen, guys, if your wife, if you're laying on the couch Saturday and your wife said, get out there and mow the yard, you can point to Exodus chapter 8, 20 verse 8 through 11 and say, I can't do it. God told me to rest. I'm not to do it. Can't even send my son out to mow the yard. It is a day of rest. And I want to tell you, that's really what it is. It's just to relax your mind, quit worrying about the affairs of this life, about paying your bills, about making money, just rest and know that God is our sufficiency. As He has said in Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of Yahweh God and His righteousness, that is, His commandments, His instructions, and all these other things will be added unto you. And so what we do in the Sabbath is we just trust. We're saying we trust You, Father, that Your word is true, Your promises are firm, that You will provide for us if we will just put You first. And that's really what the Sabbath is all about. Now, you need to understand, and as I've said all along, that the Sabbath is not changed to Sunday. The Catholic Church did that. They make no bones about it. But still a lot of Christians will say, yeah, we know that the Pope is the one, and Constantine actually, but the Catholic Church continued this tradition. But Constantine is the one that made it a penalty of death if anyone was caught observing these Jewish traditions of the Sabbath and their feast days and so forth. And it became ingrained in Christianity. But you need to understand that God has told us, as we saw in Exodus, even the stranger that sojourns among the children of Israel, and we were strangers. Now, we're not gayers or strangers within the gate right now. We have been made full citizens based upon what Yeshua did. As Paul said, we have been grafted into Israel, that good olive tree. And so we're not to boast ourselves against the root, because we don't support the root, but the root us. And then he said, also that we who are Gentiles had been strangers and aliens to the covenant, without God and without hope in the world, that through Christ and what he did on the cross, he has broken down that middle wall of partition and made us fellow heirs with them, that is, with Israel, in the household of God. And so we are part of Israel. And if you can, that's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me after having left the church, walked away from Christianity in absolute disillusionment, and searching for truth. The day that I realized that Paul wasn't just using metaphors and when he talked about us being grafted into Israel and becoming part of Israel, was the greatest day in my life. It was incredible when I realized that I am now fully Israel. I'm not a stepchild. I'm not treated as an adopted one. I am fully part of the household of God. And friends, I'm telling you, that's exciting and will set you free when you realize that. Let me turn and read one of the passages before I start talking about what we do on the Sabbath, because I want you to fully understand what God has done with us who were formerly Gentiles and been made part of Israel. In Isaiah 56, in beginning of verse 1, Isaiah says, "Thus saith Yahweh, keep ye judgment and do justice, for my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man that doeth this, and the Son of Man that lay hold on it, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and keepeth his hand from doing any evil. Neither let the son of the stranger that hath joined himself to Yahweh speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. For thus saith Yahweh unto the eunuchs, that keep my Sabbaths, and choose the things that please me, and take hold of my covenant. Even unto them will I give in mine house, and within my walls a place, and a name better than that of sons and of daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. Also the sons of the stranger that joined themselves to Yahweh, to serve him and to love the name of Yahweh, and to be his servants, every one that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon my altar, for mine house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. The Lord God, Yahweh, which gathereth the outcast of Israel, saith, yet will I gather others to him besides those that are gathered unto him. And this is what we've been talking about Yeshua came to do, is to gather the scattered of Israel, the Gentiles, the northern kingdom, and in addition to them, whosoever will may come. Anybody that will come and become a disciple of Yeshua, trust him, and enter that covenant with him, becomes part of Israel. That is the gospel. That is the good news. And I hope that you can grasp that and begin to fully walk as a child, not an adopted child, not a stepchild, but as a full son and daughter of God. That is what Yeshua has done for us, and it indeed is good news. But as I say, Christianity has forsaken the Sabbath and thinks that it's okay to worship on Sunday and ignore what our Father has commanded us to do. That came, as I say, from Rome through Constantine and the Catholic Church that came out of that. But it is a false doctrine. It is a doctrine of demons and seducing spirits to separate us from our Father. We find that it's over 84 times the Apostle Paul in the book of Acts. We can document 84 times the Apostle Paul kept the Sabbath and went to the synagogues and taught on the Sabbath. 84 times. We know, of course, that Yeshua frequented the synagogues, whether it was in Galilee, he's in the temple in Jerusalem, but whatever city Yeshua went into, he went into the synagogues on the Sabbath day and taught. So And again, as I said yesterday, the word synagogue is simply an assembly of worshipers. Today, people hear synagogue and they immediately think Jew, but a synagogue simply means a place where worshipers gather, and it can be translated assembly. You could call it a church. It doesn't make any difference. But what we see is they did not forsake the Sabbath, and this is, of course, Paul. I mentioned him 84 times because Paul's the one that everybody goes to in Galatians and Ephesians and Colossians and Romans, and they want to say Paul taught that the law was done away and we didn't have to observe. And that's just not true. Paul always observed the law. What he did was said, don't think that you can be saved by keeping the law. You are not justified by your obedience. You are justified by grace through faith. You are sanctified by your obedience. And if you can ever get that realization in your mind, it will clear all this confusion up for you. But so if let me just jump and say, if you're going to observe Shabbat, what do? Well, you go to the synagogue. This is what Yeshua did. We see clearly reading the Gospels that he went to the synagogues and he taught. He read Scripture. He performed many of his miracles around the synagogues. The Apostle Paul and the others on Shabbat went to the synagogues. That's a thing you do. So the first thing is that you would start worshiping on Saturday instead of meeting in your church on Sunday. And again, we've already said if you want to continue on Sunday, fine, but start a meeting on Saturday. Say we're going to observe Shabbat and go. And every Sabbath should have a part of worshiping and praising the Father, studying His Word. Well, then what else do you do? Well, you don't do any work. Now, there are many traditions that have sprung up that confuse people. There are a lot of traditions. My first Sabbath that I observed, I was in Jerusalem, and my guide, a guy by the name of Nathan Moore, he lived down in Holon, which was just outside Tel Aviv, and we finished the tour on a Friday about noon and let the people go so they could just have a free afternoon in Jerusalem and do what they wanted to do. Nathan asked me if I wanted to go down to Tel Aviv with him that afternoon to his father's house and observe Shabbat. His father was a cantor in the synagogue, and I jumped at the chance. I was a young pastor in a Baptist church, and I jumped at the chance. I said, man, this will be great. And so Nathan and I went down to his father's house at Holon, just outside Tel Aviv, and went into his house, and I was absolutely blown away as to what they do on the Sabbath. You know, I always thought that the Sabbath was, the Jews beating themselves up and sit down in sackcloth and ashes, and they're just mourning and beating themselves. Man, I walked into a party. It was incredible. I thought that I had come into a Thanksgiving dinner. The table, I've never seen so much food in all of my life. The meal that was spread and the meats and the breads and the vegetables and the desserts, the wine, and it was incredible. What they did is they had the lighting of the candles and they had prayers that they read in bringing on the Sabbath, and then we had a feast. Now they drink, I think it was 4 different glasses of wine that they drank and different prayers that they had in their traditions. But what I want you to understand is that is just tradition. There's not anything in the Scripture where the Father says that you're to light Sabbath candles or that you're to have a meal and drink wine. But there's nothing wrong with that. So what I would encourage you to do is start your own tradition. But it's just a day when the sun goes down on Friday, you cease work. You cease work. And it's joy in the Father and in His Word and in claiming His promise and knowing that you're a child of God. And so I live by myself, and I have for many years now. So I can't do that in my home. I'd give anything in the world if I could have gone back when I was first married and having my children, that we could have started these traditions in our home, that we'd have a Sabbath meal when the sun goes down on Friday, and that we cease all activity of work and trying to provide for ourselves and just make it a family time where we praise the Father. I wish I could go back and change that. Don't now. It's just me, my dog, and my horses up there on the farm. So I can't establish those kind of traditions now. I have my own things that I do. But I would encourage you to do your own thing. But don't get hung up on, well, we've got to do this or we've got to do that. No. It's not what you do. It's what you don't do. You don't try to provide for yourself. You don't work. You just cease work and trust the Father that His word is true and His promises are good. And that's really all there is to it. When I first got into the Messianic synagogue down in Florida, I was attending Or Yeshua, which is like Yeshua was the name of the synagogue. Had a wonderful rabbi down there. He was from South Africa, spoke with a heavy British accent. Wonderful man. But to show you how even in the Messianic movement, there's so many traditions and things that they can't seem to get away from. And I was told that on the Shabbat, they don't use their cell phones. They don't answer a telephone. They sit in the house and study the Word. That's their tradition. If they want to do that, that's fine. But you can't lay that on everybody and say, well, you got to observe the Sabbath the way I do, because the Scripture doesn't say that. The Scripture says you just rest. You quit work. And you don't have your animals work. You don't have your son and your daughter work. You just don't try to make a living. My clients all know that if they call me on the Sabbath from sundown Friday until sundown Saturday, I'm not going to discuss business. I'm just not going to do it. I say, I'll call you back Sunday or I'll get back to you Monday, but it's a Sabbath and I can't and won't discuss business. Unless, of course, it was an emergency. If I had a client that it was a real emergency and they were in the hospital and I need to do something, well, then Yeshua said it's okay to do good on the Sabbath. But I would do that to help somebody, not to try to help myself. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. But the whole thing about the Sabbath is don't make it a burden. As Yeshua said, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man. And so what's happened with these rules and regulations that you got to do the Sabbath this way and that way, it makes it something nobody wants to even try because they're afraid they'll mess it up or they don't do it right. It's pretty easy just to rest, just to let all your cares and problems go away. Say, I'll deal with them next week. I'll deal with them first day of the week, but today is a day of rest, and I'm going to enjoy it with my family. We're going to read some scripture. We're going to go to the synagogue or the church, and we're going to worship, but we're not going to work. Now, this synagogue I was in Florida, for instance, this rabbi, wonderful guy, but he told me I shouldn't use my telephone, don't use your cell phone, anything like that. In rabbinic tradition, they have what they call a Sabbath day journey. Most of them will live within walking distance of the synagogue because they don't drive their cars on Shabbat. You'll find that in New York City, especially in the Hasidic, the Orthodox communities, they won't drive a car on the Sabbath. Those are traditions. That's traditions of men. And there may not be anything wrong with the tradition, but don't make that a halakha. Don't make that a rule or a commandment from the Father that you don't do those things. That's man's tradition. You establish your own tradition in what you do. I was even told that before the Sabbath started, that I'm to open the door on my refrigerator and reach in there and unscrew the light bulb so that if I open the refrigerator on the Sabbath, that I'm not kindling a fire, but that light coming on. And I'm thinking, this is exactly the kind of stuff that Christ rebuked the Jews for, because the traditions of men, things they had added to the law that made it a burden nobody wanted to try to keep. So just please understand that all traditions are not bad, but don't let somebody tell you how you've got to observe the Sabbath. Not me or anybody else. You do that unto the Father. But just understand He wants you to rest and cease all work and trust that His provision is going to provide for you. I'm telling you, it will change your life if you will begin to do that. The kindling of a fire. Now, one thing that I've encouraged people to do is on the Sabbath, the eve of the Sabbath, Erev Shabbat, like today, try to do your shopping. I try to not go to a store and buy anything on the Sabbath. I try to make sure that I fuel my truck up this afternoon before the Sabbath starts, and I don't have to conduct business of any kind tomorrow. But if I got myself in a bind and I had to, the world's not going to end. Yeshua said, sometimes you get your ox in a ditch, but I don't deliberately drive my ox in a ditch so I can go get him out. But if something happens, don't beat yourself up about it. The Father wants your heart. He wants you to love Him and trust His provision, and it's not in the letter of the law, it's in the spirit of the law, if you just really understand that. But I find even in the Messianic movement today, there's so much that's ritual and again, where our tradition, where that's not bad in itself, don't make it a burden. Start your own tradition. After the synagogue, you go to the synagogue or to your church on Saturday and worship and have a good time. We always have a meal every Sabbath after our service. We go into the fellowship hall and we have a meal where everybody sits and we visit. We stay there maybe 2 hours. And you'll see people just sitting around visiting with one another and talking about Scripture and sharing. And it's just a great time in fellowship with our Father. After that, what do? You go home, take a nap if you want to till the sun goes down. You can. Some may want to go and visit hospitals. There's nothing wrong if you want to go visit the sick and the shut-ins and the elderly. That'd be a good thing to do on the Sabbath. Yeshua did good on the Sabbath. Heal people on the Sabbath. He was criticized for it. But what I want you to understand is that was their traditions. And they're saying, if you don't observe the Sabbath the way I do, you're doing it wrong. And Yeshua showed them that's not true. So where you don't conduct business, you can get out and do other things. Get out in the yard and play ball with your kids. Go on a picnic. I don't think, and there are people that would disagree with me, but if you want to take your son and daughter down to the pond and throw a hook in the water and catch some fish, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Unless, of course, you're selling fish to make a living, and that's what you're doing is you're catching fish to sell tomorrow in the marketplace, then you're working. But if you're just out there spending time in nature and enjoying what God has provided for us, and take that opportunity to talk to your children about God and about nature and about the world He's created for us, you can do all kind of things. My point is, don't make the Sabbath a burden. Now, I do encourage that food be prepared on Friday. As I say, get your shopping done. It's not right for women to have to slave over a hot stove all day Saturday in preparing meals. They are to rest. And so I encourage people to prepare meals that in advance that you can heat up very easily, that don't require a lot of preparation. So the Sabbath is a day of rest for the wives too. I don't do laundry on the Sabbath. All that stuff stops. I know that my laundry will be okay. I'll get it done Sunday morning. I don't mow the yard on the Sabbath. I'll do that Sunday. I don't do any kind of work. Now, do I feed my horses on the Sabbath? Yes, I do. But Yeshua said, which one of you would not loose his ox and carry it to water on the Sabbath? You have to take care of those animals that are not free to take care of themselves if they're penned up. So my point is, the Sabbath should be a blessing. It should be a joy. It should be a feast day and a time of rejoicing and dancing and just praising God in your household every week, where all cares just stop. You're not going to worry about business and life. You're just going to rest in the Father and in His provision. I'm telling you. Now, some of you are going to say, well, look, I've got a job. I've got to work on the Sabbath. Okay, I realize that we've all, because of what the church has taught us, we've started in work and we've taken positions that maybe you can't get out of right now. Pray about it. The Father will give you the desires of your heart. When you desire with all of your heart to be obedient to our Father and observe His Shabbat, then I believe that He will open a door for you. You can either go to your boss and ask him if they can adjust your schedule so you can be off on the Sabbath, or maybe the Father will give you another job. We have people in our congregation that He's done exactly that. But the Scripture tells us the Father will give you the desires of your heart. I don't know how He'll work it out for you. I'm just telling you that when you turn to the Father with all of your heart, His Word is true. And if you really want to do it, He will provide a way for you to worship Him and to lead your family to understand the truth of Scripture and what our Father wants us to do, and not the traditions of men. If you want to light candles, and as some people do on Friday night, and have a meal, that's there's nothing wrong with that. But don't condemn your neighbor if they don't light candles. They may choose to do something else. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that you just cease from work You remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. That is separate. It's separate from all other days in the week. And how you do that, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Again, as I tell you, I don't go out to eat on Saturday. We have a meal in the fellowship hall. I don't go to restaurants on Saturday until after sundown Saturday when the Sabbath is over. And I'm really not sure. But people say don't do that because people are having to work in those restaurants. They're open and they're having to serve you and all, and you're keeping them from observing the Sabbath. I'm not really sure. Most of them wouldn't be observing the Sabbath anyway. But just as out of abundance of caution, I just say, Father, if there's any chance, it's easy enough for me to stay at home and I can have food prepared that I can stick in the microwave, or it can be cold sandwiches or whatever. I'm just not going to take a chance in doing that. But the point is, turn in your life and start doing what you can. Observe the Sabbath to the extent you can, and ask the Father if you need a change in jobs or something else. And don't try to force it on people that have not been doing it. If you just do it yourself. Don't go in tonight and tell your wife that, okay, we're going to start doing this on Saturday instead. No, that's probably not going to work. Be a leader. Ask God to lead you. We confess the fact that we have been deceived. We didn't know that his Sabbath was important. We had been told that it had been changed to Sunday and that we were under grace and it wasn't important to God that we keep that anymore. Just admit that to him, and let's go to him and ask him and say, Father, show me what you'd have me to do and lead me by your Spirit as we seek to turn back to your commandments and keep them. Not to be saved, but because we are saved. To show you that we love you and we trust you. And I promise you, your life will change. It will change. Again, if you don't have a place to worship, come visit with us at B'nai Yisrael. We'll meet at 10:30 tomorrow morning. Service starts at 10:30. People start gathering around 10 o'clock. We have coffee in the fellowship hall, and people just kind of visit, hang around before services start. And then, like I say, service starts at 10:30. We try to be over by around noon sometime, and then we go in the fellowship hall to have a meal. Just a great time of fellowship. And then you got the rest of the afternoon to do what you want to do. But come visit with us and begin to encourage your church, your leadership, to turn back and understand the Sabbath is very important to our Father, and he'll bless us if we will begin to keep it. I know it'll be a change in your life, but it'll be a positive change. And so, Shabbat Shalom. See you Monday morning. Shalom Aleichem.